As the Washington Nationals dropped Game 1 against the Seattle Mariners, I think we learned one thing about yesterday's loss, and that this Nationals team can stick with the Seattle Mariners.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. So the everydayers out there, you know who I am. I'm Ryan Clary. You can find me over on Twitter at RyanClary11. You can also follow the Locked On Nationals Twitter as well at LO_Nationals. Later on in the show, we're going to preview tonight's game, 9:40 Eastern time, against the Seattle Mariners. And again, can the Nationals get a win in tonight's game to try to avoid a two-game loss scenario? We're going to discuss that. Second segment, this is what today's show is about. If you've been watching the College World Series, you've seen a ton of prospects that could be there at number 2 for the Washington Nationals, but it is down to 2 LSU Tigers. Outfielder Dylan Crews versus right-handed pitcher Paul Skenes. There have been some developments on it, and if you're into nice outfielder bats, you may like that one. So stick around. I'll catch you up to date on the latest rumors there. But let's start off with talking about last night's loss. And obviously, the Nationals did not have their best night yesterday, losing after having a pretty nice little start there, starting off 3-0, 1 run in each of the first 3 innings there. Lane Thomas with a leadoff home run to start off things. And Lane Thomas, come on. Lane Thomas is out of this world up to this point in 2023. Lane Thomas now has an .860 OPS after averaging 2 hits in last night's contest, 2 RBIs as well, and 3 strikeouts in yesterday's ball game. Lane Thomas continues to put the back of the Washington Nationals on his, and that is what he has done so far in 2023. But before we continue to talk about this offense and really kind of get down to the nitty-gritty of it, the Nationals struck out 12 times in yesterday's contest. 12 times. And yes, you're going up against a very good pitcher with Luis Castillo, but the Nationals kind of proved in those first few innings that they could stick with someone like Castillo, who could be in the Cy Young conversation come this October. But this Nationals offense did not take advantage of what they should have, because you had sometimes with runners in scoring position, you had opportunities there for the Nationals to take over, and they simply did not. 8 runners left on base in total, and 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position. Now, you may ask, well, what's new? This is kind of the expectation for this team, right? And yes, it is 100% correct to say that this Nationals team and what they have done, it's kind of proven over time that it's not a very good offense. It is not an offense made for 2023. And that is what we have noticed, and is continuing to go downhill with this lack of power in this offense. But last night, you saw a step up from someone like a Dominic Smith, who's kind of been on a tear recently, considering the fact that he had a very slow start at the plate. And I believe for almost the first month, he only had singles here in Washington, D.C. That was not a good start. But yesterday, he got a home run, he got a hold of one, and added another hit as well, including another walk also. His average is up to 260. His season has kind of revenged himself, you could say, because you see the defense that he plays, and you see the value that he plays over there, with multiple times scooping C.J. Abrams in those low throws yesterday. Dominic Smith has value for this team right now, just from the simple fact of what he has done and what we have seen with Dominic Smith in 2023. While it's never the prettiest of performances, while it's never a glowing rainbows and butterflies and everything, we have all these great feelings about him. It's not that easy. But Dominic Smith and what he has done in 2023 continues to be that value for this Nationals team. And it comes in more ways than just his offense. It's his defense and the ability to have a smooth glove over on first base. And that matters, considering a Luis Garcia, a CJ Abrams, two young middle infielders who will make mistakes. Again, only 22 and 23 years old with Luis Garcia. These guys are learning. They are still developing up in the major leagues. And while Luis Garcia has been in the system since, I believe, 2016, 2017, don't get it mistaken. This guy is still a work in progress. And we see that from times like last night, to where maybe wasn't all clicking for him. While he did have a nice little day at the plate, there were 2 walks, 2 hits in his 3 at-bats, and had an RBI as well. Luis Garcia is a work in progress, and you're starting to see much better at-bats from someone like Garcia, considering what his value is. And that is kind of the theme of today's first segment, is what is their value to this team? What can they provide? Because last night, while, again, it wasn't some amazing offensive performance, this Nationals team only scored a handful of runs after that first 3 innings. But the thing about this team is that they do not recognize what they do well and what they don't do well. And you may be asking, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? You have guys like Luis Garcia coming up there at sometimes and swinging out of his shoes. You're not a power bat. I need you to get on base. I need you to find the hole, and I need you to simply get on and wreak havoc. That is what Luis Garcia does. That is the role that he plays, to be a tough out, to not strike out, and to put the ball in play. Because Luis Garcia, he's batting .278 with a .708 OPS. For a second baseman, that's relatively pretty good numbers. I'm not really expecting a big power tool. I'm expecting a hard out, someone who's going to play solid defense, in which, by the way, he's taken a huge step up over at second base, being he's been an elite defensive second baseman so far in 2023. But looking at his offense, that is what Luis Garcia does well. And we've seen it as times go on and as he doesn't strike out the way that a lot of Nationals hitters have in the past. Luis Garcia is starting to click. And I think that is a good sign of development for the young 23-year-olds, just turned 23. So Luis Garcia, as he continues to build, as he continues to add on what he really wants to do and what he really wants to be as a major league player, it's just something to keep in mind when talking about this young Nationals team. It's a work in progress for a lot of these guys. And I think in last night's ball game, while you have Trevor Williams, he wasn't god-awful, but he wasn't that good either. Going only 4 innings, his pitch count was getting up there, and ultimately just didn't have his A-game stuff, giving up 8 hits in those 4 innings, only 4 strikeouts, and giving up 2 home runs. That's not what you really want to see, as his ERA is now back up for a 4.28 for the 31-year-old right-handed pitcher. But thank you guys for making Locked On Nationals your first listen. And for tonight's game, the Nats play the Mariners today at 9:40 Eastern time. It is so late for a West Coast game. I'm not going to lie to you. I almost fell asleep after the ball game yesterday. Catch every pitch in the Nats hometown broadcast. So SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Nationals there. Before we get into discussing this big picture topic, because I don't know if you guys have really been following the College World Series, but if you have been, welcome. And if you haven't been, welcome as well, because these two guys, Dylan Crews, one of the best prospects to come out of college baseball into the MLB Draft in quite some time, and as well as Paul Skenes, LSU right-handed pitcher. Again, some people are saying he's the best pitcher since Steven Strasburg. And there was a report yesterday that you may be happy about. I can say this for a fact. I am happy about this. And if it is true, the Nationals will have themselves another all-star player. I'm going to discuss that and what it means for this Nationals team and this organization going forward. But before we do that, I got to tell you guys about our friends over at eBay Motors. And guys, for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit. Or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game. When you shop on eBay Motors with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And now let's get into the main topic of today's show, the meat, you could say, of Locked On Nationals on June 27th. This is what I want to talk about. This is the story that I want to get into because this has an effect on the Nationals for a decade to come. If you didn't see yesterday, there was a report from ESPN saying that Paul Skenes and Dylan Crews, the number one prospect in the MLB Draft, come this summer in a few weeks from now, only about 12 days away from that MLB Draft. There is now speculation spewing around that Dylan Crews might not want to play for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And if you aren't aware, Dylan Crews, by far and away, in my opinion, is the number one player in this draft class, just considering he's a center fielder and what he does out there, what he does in the open field grass. He's a very good defender in my mind. He is an amazing hit tool. He can hit for power, and also he has some speed in his arsenal as well. Dylan Crews could be a five-tool player. Very much so could be. He could hit for average. He could hit for all the power in the world. He could steal bags. He could play a plus center field in the major leagues. But then on the other hand, there's a guy named Paul Skenes, who has the most strikeouts this season in college baseball since 2011 when Trevor Bauer did it at UCLA. Paul Skenes had one of the most dominant pitching performances this season that we have ever seen, and it was going up against top-notch talent in the Southeastern Conference. It's not some easy decision. Let's not get this wrong, because all the cards are in the Pirates' hand. Really what matters with this is what the Pirates do at number one and what they want to do there. Because there was speculation, as we said yesterday, ESPN did report that Dylan Crews may not want to be a Pittsburgh Pirate. And let me tell you this. Our friends over at TalkNats, over on Twitter, catch their blog as well over there. This was the quote that they got directly from Dylan Crews. Quote, "I think it would be awesome to be drafted by the Nationals. I guess whatever happens, happens. I have no control over which team drafts me. I have control over my process each and every day and being present every single day. If that were to happen, if that were to be where I end up in the future, that would be awesome. I think it's a great organization." He went on to say, "I think Washington, D.C. would be a really cool place to play." You heard the man. Dylan Crews, the number one prospect in this draft. Don't get it twisted. I love Paul Skenes. I've raved about him all year long. I love Paul Skenes, and I love the prospect. It looks like that is still the pick up to yesterday. Now with these quotes out, now with these rumors out that the Pirates, which they have done in the past, they've taken a surprise number one overall pick to manipulate the draft stock value. What the Pirates want to do in this scenario is cut a deal with either someone like a Paul Skenes, Wyatt Langford, or even a Max Clark, the high school prospect who is probably a top 5 pick in this year's draft. They want to cut a deal with one of those guys for a little bit lesser value than someone like a Dylan Crews, because someone like a Dylan Crews is probably going to man a $10 million draft pool. That is a lot of money to give a first-round pick. But again, that's what you have to pay for a talent like a Dylan Crews, and that is likely what it will take even at number 2 overall if the Nationals do select them. So the main question of this segment is, who should the Nationals want to pick? Who should this organization want to bear arms with and really make them one of the faces of the Washington Nationals in the 2020s and beyond, hopefully? Well, let's get this out of the way first before we answer this, because I know this is a big topic in town. Dylan Crews is a Scott Boris client. That is a fact. He is with Scott Boris, and we know what that means. We know what that means, right? Dylan Crews, Scott Boris. You may ask, who's been a Scott Boris client in the past? Who has been a Scott Boris client? Bryce Harper, Steven Strasburg, Anthony Rendon, Steven Strasburg again. All those guys have been Scott Boris clients. Why don't we want to draft Dylan Crews if he's a Scott Boris client? You don't want 6 to 7 years of a guy under team control to help you and help this rebuild completely revamp? You don't want that? That is insane. Just because someone is a Scott Boris client, and while, yes, I'm a fan, I'm frustrated by it too. We all are. We all want to see these guys stay in DC and be homegrown talent. No, by the way, Juan Soto, another Scott Boris guy. Scott Boris has an eye for talent, whether we like it or not. Scott Boris does his job very well. He is supposed to get them the most money possible, and that is what he does. He is a very good baseball agent. And oh, by the way, a lot of people don't really understand what agents really do for the player. Well, I can tell you this. Scott Boris invests in his players. He invests hundreds of thousands of dollars into these players to get off-season treatment, to get trainings, and all these different things. And Scott Boris invests in his guys. That is why a lot of them are some of the best players in baseball. It's not just solely because of Scott Boris. He's got a name. Everyone knows who Scott Boris is in the baseball world. They know what he's about. He gets the best players, and he usually makes them a lot better. That's just the way that it is. But that's not a reason to why this Nationals team should not take Dylan Crews. Because to answer the question that I have posed in recently, who would I take? Dylan Crews or Paul Skenes? It's not even a discussion. It's Dylan Crews. Think about it this way. Paul Skenes and the impact that he could have. He could pitch once every 5 games, and he could be the best pitcher in baseball, which would be amazing. I'd love Paul Skenes. I love the prospect of Paul Skenes. But Dylan Crews and the impact that he could make 5 days a week, 162 games a year, 365 days a year, whatever it may take, the impact that Dylan Crews would have on this Nationals team would change the trajectory of everything. Because next year, in August of 2024, or even September of 2024, that is when Dylan Crews will crack the major leagues, similar to Paul Skenes, considering if they have no injuries. Let's just assume that right away. And they have no struggles down in the minor leagues. Both of these guys will be in the majors by next year. And think of it this way. James Wood, Dylan Crews, and hell, Lane Thomas in the outfield in 2024. All 3 of those guys not only having impact bats, not only all plus defenders, they are all legit outfielders that will help this team win now. And if you get someone like a Dylan Crews in your lineup every single day, hitting the way that people think he will hit, because, oh, by the way, my player comparison for Dylan Crews is a Corbin Carroll type. If you're not familiar with Corbin Carroll, you should be. He's probably the National League MVP up to this point besides Ronald Acuna. Now, I don't think Corbin Carroll and Dylan Crews are that comparable. I think they are different players. I think Carroll has a better power swing. I think he's a faster player. But I think Dylan Crews has the hit tool and blows him away. I think Dylan Crews is kind of like that Daniel Murphy bat back in the 2016, 2017 years with the Washington Nationals. I think he is someone who's going to win a batting title in the National League. I think he is someone who could hit 25 to 30 bombs down the line. I think he's someone who's going to drive in 100 runs as well and also steal probably about 20 to 25 bases as well. That is the type of impact that Dylan Crews will have. And also, he's a center fielder. The impact on that alone is big. Now, while his defense is not some mesmerizing talent that he's got, his talent is what he does at the plate. But don't get it fooled. Dylan Crews, he has the talent in the outfield to stick in center field and also do it well. I don't think he's a Gold Glove defender, but we saw the catches that he made during this College World Series. Multiple last night, one crashing to the wall, one running in on a weird fly ball. He came in and he caught it. Dylan Crews is that impact bat that this Nationals need in this system right now, here, right now, this second. And all of this for touting Dylan Crews the way that I have been, don't get this twisted whatsoever. If the Nationals did end up with Paul Skenes, I'm pumped. I'm excited. I'm jumping for joy, as you should be as well. But what Paul Skenes and Dylan Crews, what separates them is the fact that Dylan Crews can impact your lineup 5 days a week. Every day. Not every 5 days. He can impact your lineup every single day. And think of it this way. Think of this lineup for a second. Batting first, Lane Thomas. Batting second, Dylan Crews. Batting third, whatever it may be. Batting fourth, Keibert Ruiz. James Wood is in the lineup. Lane Thomas again. Victor Robles coming off the bench, or whatever that is. Mackenzie Gore, Josiah Gray. That's a pretty damn good lineup, and that is by next year. CJ Abrams in that fold as well. Luis Garcia. The Nationals have a pretty complete squad when looking at it from that angle. And if they were to go into this offseason with someone like a Dylan Crews, you really don't have that many gaps to fill on your major league roster come the middle of summer next year. Because you'll have James Wood. You're going to have Dylan Crews in left field or center field, whatever that works. Lane Thomas, right field. And then in the infield, CJ Abrams, Luis Garcia up the middle. First base, that's probably where your hole is, and that's probably where you could sign someone this offseason. Catcher, Keibert Ruiz and Riley Adams. And you have Josiah Gray and Mackenzie Gore at the head of your rotation. And also, Jake Bennett, Jackson Rutledge. All these prospects who are coming up and will flood the system here any soon. That is the way that I look at it, and that is why I would take Dylan Crews over Paul Skenes if that's what it came to. And you should be on the same boat as well, because that guy is an impact player that will help this team instantly, dramatically, whatever you look at it as. Dylan Crews is my pick for the Washington Nationals in the 2023 MLB Draft if it was up to me. The Nationals play the Mariners tonight at 9:40 Eastern time, and obviously the Nationals, in my opinion, they need to win this ball game because you're going up against a relatively pretty good pitcher, and you got Jake Irvin on the mound. And you know how I feel about Jake Irvin. I like him, but he's got to show me a little bit more. Catch every pitch of the Nats Hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Nationals there. And when we come back, we're going to preview tonight's matchup. Like I said, Jake Irvin, 1-4, 4.71 ERA. We're going to preview that after this. Now let's discuss this pitching matchup as Bryan Woo. Someone you may not really know, but this guy is legit. And I've talked about him a little bit on yesterday's program. He has a 5.09 ERA in those 4 starts, but don't get it twisted. This guy is a good pitcher, and he has had productive innings so far in 2023. He's got 17 and 2/3 innings pitched and 25 strikeouts and a 1.19 whip. Now, the ERA is a little inflated considering he's he's only walked 5 batters in those 17 innings pitched. He's got 10 earned runs, but what has hurt him? The home runs, giving up 3 home runs in those 17 innings pitched in those 4 starts this season. Bryan Woo is not going to be someone who will shove his fastball down your throat all day. He's going to kind of fool you with his junk and in with his breaking pitches. That is the pitcher that we expect from him tonight. He doesn't really walk as many guys as you would think, and not a lot of batters are really hitting him. This guy, while the ERA tells a different story than what his numbers actually are, a 1.19 whip in your rookie season in your first 4 starts is very good in my mind. I will take that from a young pitcher any day. And that is what the Seattle Mariners team has done well over the years. They have developed pitching, and they have done so in a very good way. Now, you may ask, what are the matchups for tonight? What do we want to see from guys? Well, right-handed pitcher Bryan Woo, you think of guys like Keibert Ruiz. Left-handed bat, that's where I like Keibert Ruiz from the left side of the plate. Luis Garcia, Dominic Smith, Corey Dickerson, guys like that who could have a major impact on this game and on this series, because the Nationals do need to win this, in my opinion. I'm tired of the tanking stuff. I'm tired of the losing. I want to win games, and I want to win games against good teams. And while the Mariners may not be the best version of themselves, I think by the end of September, it'll be a much different story with this Mariners team. But I want to see a good team get beaten by these Washington Nationals, because it feels like, obviously, outside of the Padres series, it's been a little bit of a while since the Nationals have actually beaten a good, talented team. It's really been since the Braves, in my opinion. That's been a long time. I want to win. I'm tired of the losing. I'm tired of the tanking talk. If you get Dylan Crews or Paul Skenes, that's all you need. I can tell you that right now. That is all I want. That's all I need. That's all I'm asking for. One of those two guys to get us out of this tier, because that's how close we are. We are so damn close to actually clicking and making this team a much better version of itself. We're a few bullpen arms, a few starting pitchers, and just a few positional players away from making this a much better team. Now, while you say that out loud, that's about 9 guys that we need. Maybe we are a little further away. Maybe we are. Thank you guys for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. The Nats play the Mariners tonight at 9:40 Eastern time. You can catch Jake Irvin versus Brian Wu like every Nationals game, and catch every pitch of the Nats hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Nationals there. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Thank you for making us your first listen, and thank you guys again for not only making us your first listen, but sticking through me with this sore throat that I have. I'm on the DL. I'll catch you guys next time. Go Nats.